Why do you think comedies in the last few years aren't nearly as good, say 10 to 15 years ago? We used to have bangers like The Other Guy, Superbad, Tropic Thunder, just to name a few. Really good question, that Zach. Thank you for the super chat. I think it's because for multiple reasons. Number one, everyone from the prime of these, like the prime group of people making these movies, moved into other genres of movie making. Seth Rogen has appeared in. First of all, Seth Rogen's writing for The Boys, writing for Invincible. Seth Rogen is now in Pam and Tommy. Like he's moved on to drama. Franco literally got canceled. Jonah Hill kind of moved into drama and directing of his own. I think a lot of it is these actors sort of evolved into more like they got their fix with comedy. They're like, hey, we had a good run with comedy. Let's try other things now. Like look at Jason Sudeikis and Jason Bateman. They were in, Horrible Bosses and We Were the Millers, all these different movies. And they moved on to Ozark, a drama show. Ted Lasso. It's like, I feel like as an actor, you can only get so much out of doing comedy movies for 5 to 10 years. And then you like, what's the next step? And so a lot of these guys, Adam Sandler, Uncut Gems. Yeah. Like how long can you do the same shtick over and over? So I think for a lot of the people behind the scenes got tired of just doing comedy and were like, hey, let's go put our real passion in something. So they like racked it up doing these comedy movies and they're like, hey, let's go do a TV show or something.
I also think a part of it is that humor itself evolves in a way. There's certain jokes that like you could make 15 years ago that passed that wouldn't necessarily pass as well now unless they were delivered in the correct way, if that makes sense. And humor evolves. So like the comedies that are coming out now they adapt to the humor that is like today's humor, and that humor doesn't necessarily work all that well to a comedy, like talking in a TikTok audio type thing. You know what I mean? Like saying like something that's like a trend on Twitter or whatever, like how we talk and make jokes in our day, that doesn't really translate well to a comedy.
Oh yeah. So you're saying like the, what you say, like that style of humor, like, it's like embedded in our generation and it doesn't translate to a screenplay really well.
Yeah. And it's just like the humor that was 10 years ago when we had 21 Jump Street it's not the humor of our generation now that like we actively every day engage with, and it's also not jokes that we could necessarily make now, if that makes sense. Like I watch a lot of stand-up comedians, and it's a constant thing that they're always talking about how like stand-up comedy gets really hard because like you can make a joke that's funny to one person but insensitive to another, and like you can't always make everybody happy with your jokes. So like some people find it better to just not make jokes at all to avoid upsetting anybody.
Yeah.
You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I do. I was going to say, I think studios, kind of bouncing off that, I think the real reason, obviously I gave a point about actors kind of moving on from comedy, but another real reason is studios just don't want to take a risk with comedies anymore. You got to look at it from a business perspective. I second everything you said. I definitely think society changed viewpoints, all these things. But when it comes down to the business aspect of things, more often than not, a comedy movie is not really going to perform well at the box office anymore. And so that's something that's going to go straight to streaming, or they run the risk of it being poorly received in society. And so they just don't want to take the chance and make the movie, So a lot of those factors, the actors moving on, the business side of things, the changes in viewpoints in the world. I think it's a lot of those sort of combined, but there's no denying we had a hell of a run.
There's also,
like 2005, I'm going to tell you right now, from 2003 to 2013, that 10-year run, some of my favorite comedies of all time. And they were just boom, boom. It's like they had a formula down. And much like anything else that evolves, like college football, for example, it evolves, We still get comedies, like No Hard Feelings was funny. Different type of funny, though.
That's what I was going to say. We have some good and rare ones. Like No Hard Feelings got me good, you guys. Like that was a 5 out of 5 for me. I was laughing my ass off. I was wheezing watching that movie.
And we've got dark comedy. Like Barry, speaking of one of the dudes from this, Bill Hader, funny as hell, but it's like not just pure comedy. It's actually a lot deeper thematically, and it's like a drama character study at times, but there's humor laced throughout the show. So it's not like a pure screwball comedy. We're not getting those anymore, but I think that's okay.
But it's also like more to my point. I just came up with a good sort of analogy for it. Think about SNL back in the day, how funny it was. And then think about SNL now. Like the humor is just
unwatchable.
The humor just has evolved, and it's just not.
I also just think that comedic writers suck ass now.
And it's also hard to find somebody as an actor that can have good comedic timing.
I think a lot of people This is actually a point. This is a really good conversation, by the way, Zach. Really appreciate the super chat. A lot of people who would be writing comedies like the ones you've mentioned here that would be hilarious are like, screw this. I'm just going to be a stand-up comedian.
True.
And they go make their own stand-up now.
You know what I think? I think
You know?
only one person can revive comedy movies, and that is Dylan O'Brien.
Okay.
He's so funny.
Fair.
I want him in a comedy.
There's just so many. Think about how many like outlets there are for comedy right now. Like, Bo Burnham is a whole like genre of comedy. It's like a musical thing. You've got like The Lonely Island. Like, there's so much comedy out there. Then you got like Shane Gillis, Burt Kreischer, Tom Segura, like all these dudes on TikTok, and of course they have their Netflix specials. But comedy's out there. I just don't think it's in the same type of media as it was for the 10-year run. I reference 03 to 13. You could stretch that out to 2015, 16 tops probably. After the 2010s, we really haven't had one of those studio comedies.
Even like not just straight up comedies, but like rom-coms aren't the same because the comedy's not the same. Like movies like Easy A or She's All That, stuff like that. Like you just don't get that anymore.